Right now, you probably think of yourself as part of something, a country, a city, a team, a family. You root for certain people and quietly roll your eyes at others. You have in-groups and out-groups, and you didn't choose most of them. They were just there when you arrived. That feeling, the quiet, automatic sense that your people are a little better than those people, didn't start with nationalism or sports rivalries or social media tribalism. It goes back tens of thousands of years to small bands of humans sitting around fires in a world that was trying to kill them. And the strange truth is, that feeling wasn't a flaw. For most of human history, it was a survival mechanism so effective that it became baked into the architecture of the human mind. So where did it come from? What actually made ancient humans feel that their tribe was better, smarter, more favored, more real than the strangers on the other side of the ridge? The answer is not what most people expect, and it says something uncomfortable about us that we'd probably rather not hear. Let's start with the most basic fact. Ancient humans lived in small bands, typically between 20 and 150 people. That number isn't random. Robin Dunbar, a British anthropologist, identified that the human brain seems to have a cognitive limit of around 150 meaningful social relationships. Beyond that, the mental overhead becomes too much to manage. You can't personally know everyone. You can't track their loyalties, their debts, their reliability in a crisis, so you stop treating them as fully real. Anthropologists call people inside that circle in-group members, and everyone outside it out-group members. And here is the part that sounds cold, but was brutally practical. Out-group members, in many ancient contexts, were not automatically extended the same moral consideration as in-group members. Not because ancient humans were monsters, but because in a world of limited food, limited shelter, and constant threat, resources given to strangers were resources taken away from your children. Empathy had a budget, and it was spent close to home first. That boundary wasn't just practical, it was actively reinforced with meaning. Every tribe on record, from the smallest band-level societies studied by anthropologists to the largest ancient civilizations, developed some version of the same story. We are the real people, the chosen ones, the ones who know the proper way to live. The word many indigenous groups use for themselves in their own language often translates directly to the people or the human beings, not as arrogance necessarily, but as a statement of full personhood. The implication, almost never stated out loud, was that the others were something slightly less. Language was one of the sharpest tools for drawing that line. Your own language didn't just communicate, it carried the whole texture of your world, your jokes, your rituals, your history, your way of dividing up reality. The moment someone opened their mouth and the sounds came out wrong, the ancient brain registered it immediately. Not like us, different, potentially dangerous. The word barbarian in ancient Greek literally derived from the sound foreigners made when they spoke. Bar, 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 meaningless noise, not real language. And here is where it gets deeper than just language. Tribes didn't just feel superior because of what they had, they felt superior because of what they believed. Every ancient human group developed a cosmology, a story about why the world was the way it was and what their place in it meant. And almost without exception, those stories put their own group at the center. Their ancestors were the first people. Their land was the land the gods or spirits cared about most. Their rituals were the ones that actually worked, that kept the rains coming and the game running and the children alive. This wasn't delusion. It was social technology. A group that genuinely believed it was special fought harder to protect its territory. It cohered more tightly under pressure. It had a reason to share resources and take risks for each other that went beyond simple self-interest. The belief in collective superiority, in being chosen or favored or more fully human than the tribe over the hill, functioned as social glue. And social glue was survival infrastructure. The archaeological record backs this up in ways that are both fascinating and disturbing. Cave paintings and early symbolic art suggest that ancient humans were marking identity far earlier than anyone expected. ochre body paint, specific animal teeth worn as pendants, particular burial arrangements. These were not just decoration, they were uniforms. They were signals that said, I am one of these people and not one of those people. Researchers studying Upper Paleolithic sites in Europe have found evidence of elaborate mortuary rituals, carefully arranged burials with grave goods, symbolic objects placed beside the dead. The people who received these burials were mourned and honored. The people who didn't, the strangers, the outgroup, were another matter entirely. There is evidence of violence, brutal, organized, deliberate violence between ancient human groups. Sites in Europe and the Americas show skeletal remains with trauma consistent with massacre, with weapons driven into skulls at close range. These weren't isolated incidents of personal conflict. They looked like raids, like coordinated attacks on rival groups. The sense of superiority wasn't just psychological, it had consequences. But here is the part that complicates the simple narrative of ancient tribalism as pure aggression. The same groups that attacked their enemies also traded with their neighbors. The same humans who marked their identity with ochre and animal teeth also exchanged shells and obsidian across hundreds of kilometers of hostile terrain. The social reality was more textured than a clean line between us and them. Tribes felt superior to some groups while maintaining careful, respectful, even warm relationships with others. The hierarchy wasn't just about who you hated, it was about who you trusted, who you owed, who you might one day need when the winter ran long and the food ran out. Superiority was a negotiating position as much as a belief, a way of walking into an encounter with another group from a position of self-assurance rather than vulnerability. Ritual played a crucial role in maintaining all of this. Anthropologists who have studied hunter-gatherer and early pastoral societies consistently find that the activities that seem most religious, most ceremonial, most symbolic from the outside were doing real social work on the inside. Coming-of-age rituals didn't just mark a transition from child to adult, they bound the young person into the community's identity in ways that were physically and emotionally unforgettable. Shared hardship, shared secrecy, shared pain, these are powerful bonding agents. They create a sense of us that is almost impossible to explain to someone who wasn't there. The content of those rituals also served to separate. The specific dances your group knew, the specific foods you did or didn't eat, the specific prayers you recited, these were not universal. They were deliberately particular. Part of their function was to create markers of belonging that were difficult for outsiders to fake. You couldn't just walk into a tribe and pretend to be one of them if the initiation rites had put you through something outsiders simply hadn't experienced. This is one of the reasons superiority felt so natural and so justified. It wasn't just belief, it was embodied. An outsider wasn't just someone who thought different things. They were someone who had a different body in a real and felt sense. The technology gap mattered too, and ancient humans knew it. When one group had better spear points, better knowledge of animal migration routes, better methods for preserving food, they were not subtle about the pride this generated. Skill was survival. Expertise was status. A tribe that had figured out how to flint-knap a blade thinner and sharper than anyone else had something genuinely worth being proud of, and they knew it. The craftsman who produced superior tools was respected within the group in ways that had real material consequences for his family's well-being. But that pride and skill could curdle quickly into contempt for groups who hadn't figured it out yet. If your people had learned to preserve meat through a brutal winter and the neighboring group hadn't, and that group consequently starved, the temptation to interpret that as moral evidence, evidence that your people were more capable, more deserving, was enormous, and ancient humans gave in to that temptation regularly. Because it felt true, it matched what they saw. There is something uncomfortable about recognizing all of this because it doesn't go away cleanly. The same cognitive structures that made ancient humans feel superior to other tribes are still running in modern human minds on largely the same hardware, in largely the same way. The categories have changed, the tribes have gotten much larger, the rituals look different, but the underlying pattern, the automatic sorting of people into in-group and out-group, the narrative of collective specialness, the readiness to see out-group members as slightly less real or less fully human, that pattern is not ancient history, it is this morning. What changed, slowly, over thousands of years of painful experience, is not the architecture of the feeling, it is the structures built to contain it. Laws that apply to everyone regardless of tribe, moral frameworks extended beyond the people you personally know, institutions designed to make the outgroup slightly more visible, slightly more real, slightly harder to write off as less than fully human. Those structures are fragile. They require maintenance. They require the constant countercultural work of pushing empathy past its natural radius, of deliberately extending moral consideration to people your nervous system would rather file under them. Ancient humans didn't build those structures. They barely had the leisure to imagine them. They were too busy surviving the winter, keeping the children alive, holding the band together against everything the world threw at it. The sense of superiority that helped them do all of that was not a bug in their design, it was a feature. The question is whether it still is.